It is autumn, dear people, and you know what that means. It is hunting season. And so with that in mind, this video is going to be, again, linked to the Fae through, well, we're going to start with the wild hunt, and we'll move on to more specifics from there. If you haven't seen Missing 411 The Hunted, I highly suggest you do so, specifically if you are interested in this sort of thing. The wild hunt goes back, very, very far into our past. You can find versions of it, certainly worldwide, and most in the Western civilization. Wild hunts typically involve a soul-raving chase led by a mythological figure, a figure at the head that leads the hunt. They are generally escorted by ghostly or supernatural group of hunters in wild pursuit, with or without dogs. The leader of the hunt is often a figure of great importance. The furthest we go back, it is Odin in Germanic and Scandinavian descent. Sometimes it is a historical or legendary figure, like Theodoric the Great, or the Danish king Vladimir Atterdag, or the Welsh deity who escorts the dead, which is a psychopomp. What a word, psychopomp. The Grim Reaper is a psychopomp. Gwyn Apdud, which, because my Welsh is absolutely abhorrent and ridiculous, you get that. Even biblical figures such as Herod or Cain, or Gabriel the angel, or the devil himself, lost souls, spirits, they're all been seen as the leader of the wild hunt, including Mother Hulda, Pircha, which, if you've been following the camping series, you know about her, and many others. The hunters are generally locally known, dead ghosts. They could be fae, they could be demons or Valkyrie, elves, which same sort of thing in different types. But there's also the ghostly dogs, which go along with the hunt. Very much the black dogs, the shucks, the grims. And so this is a very, very frightening thing to see or to hear. If you saw the wild hunt, it was supposed to mean some kind of catastrophe, such as war or plague or death. And especially if you spot it, if you see it, you're probably going to die. It's a death portent, like the Banshee or the Dullahan. People who encounter the hunt, and this is the important part, this is the star right here, important part. The people who encounter it may be abducted to the underworld or to the fairy kingdom, and it was believed that the people's spirits could be pulled away during their sleep to join the cavalcade and the hunt, I suppose in their dreams. There was a recent lore podcast, it would be 3 weeks back from when this video comes out, that was on the wild hunt, and which brings me to doing this video because lore is amazing. And I've always loved the myths and the legends of the wild hunt, and it's always fascinated me, and it never really occurred to me that it could be, it could be something to do with what people saw, heard, or could be related to the 411 disappearances of the far past. if you want to hear it about the hunt from Laura's perspective, which is much better written than mine, I can guarantee, and Aaron sounds so much more polished and poetic than me. Really, it's episode 152. I will put a link to that in the description. And once you've done listening to that, just go listen to all of them, because it's so relaxing to listen to the Lore podcast. It's so amazing. At any rate, he mentions that those who encounter the hunt in northern Germany, which, again, Germany is the link with the list of unsafe things as being German. The people in northern Germany, they sometimes will run into the hunt and they can try and stop it, which always ends badly, or they can help them and they may gain gold or part of the animal that was killed, but it generally means misfortune for the community at large. The concept was developed based on the comparative mythology of Jacob Grimm in Deutsche Mythology, 1835, as a folkloric survival of Germanic pagan tradition. But comparable folk myths are found throughout northern, western, and central Europe. Grimm popularized the term wild hunt, wild Jagd, for the phenomenon. According to Susan Greenwood, a scholar, the wild hunt primarily concerns an initiation into the wild, untamed forces of natures in its dark and cathartic aspects. So it's not the sunny camping, fishing sort of thing. It is the dark things in the wild. Carlo Ginzburg wrote in Deciphering Witches, metamorphoses, cavalcades, ecstasies, followed by the egress of the soul in the shape of an animal. These are different paths to a single goal. Between animals and souls, animals and the dead, animals and beyond, there exists a profound connection. The hunt would occur at the changes of seasons, so, berry picking time, or to herald an oncoming wars and problems and, who knows, pandemics, whatever, plagues. There's echoes of this in other places in the world. In Stan Jones's country song, Ghost Riders in the Sky, it tells about cowboys chasing the devil's cattle through the night sky. And that kind of echoes back to the myth. And it was actually based on a ghost story he had heard as a child. Hawaii has a version as well that is quite close, bearing in mind that equines were not native to Hawaii, but we do have the Hukaiapu, who are the night marchers. They're ghostly apparitions of a band of beings, of warriors, who move with purpose to the beat of primitive-sounding drums. Some say they are armed spirit warriors en route to or from battle, toting archaic weaponry and clothed in decorated helmets and cloaks. Other accounts tell of high-ranking alii rulers, spirits, being guided to places of higher importance or to welcome new warriors to join in the battle. Perhaps these restless souls are looking to reclaim rightful territory, replay a battle gone awry, or avenge their own deaths. Some say the night marchers are searching methodically for an entrance into the next world. Night marchers are said to roam through very specific locations and are often recognized by their raised torches and repeating ollies or chants. Although there have been few scattered reports of daytime marches, these apparitions appear to be most active at night and are said to march on certain nights designated by the moon. And although the night marchers allegedly float a few inches off the ground, some locals tell accounts of seeing mysterious footprints in their path after they've passed. There's a number of places that I am not familiar with Hawaii, so they don't mean a lot to me. If you want to know exactly where they are, I will let you look up the night marchers on yourself. What do you do if you come across a night march? Well, it must never be interrupted. You should not look at them. If you look at them, it means death. It could be for you or it could be for a relative. So you are urged to crouch low or bow down, get on the ground, play dead, avert your eyes, and whatever you see or hear or feel, do not move, as any sound or movement could invite their deadly glance. So I don't know if it's if you see them or if they see you, but either way, you don't want to do that. The night marchers go on about to their destination, and they don't deviate from that. So, they're quite set in their ways, literally ways and paths. Of course, going back to the wild hunt, there are many creatures and gods that are associated with it. Cernunnos, and he is linked with Hearn the Hunter. Hearn the Hunter was first heard of in Shakespearean, that we know of. The first written down history we have is from Shakespeare. And so, he goes back to Elizabethan times at least. He was believed to be a real keeper of the grounds. He lives in Windsor Forest, and only in Windsor Forest. He's very specific to that place. He was first seen in the Merry Wives of Windsor. And here's some basic facts about him. He was called Hearn or Horn. Hearn has been a keeper, a hunter, or a woodsman in the park. He was believed to be a historical figure. Windsor mothers used him as a boogeyman to get their children to behave as boogeymen are created to do. He had a special oak that was Hearn's oak, or the blasted oak. Some say he hung himself on it, and so it's now haunted. There's supposed to be green fire around it. The oak itself was torn down many centuries ago and was replanted. He only appears around midnight in winter, they say. And he wears antlers on his head, which is what links him to Cernunnos. And apparel, he'll even appear in the form of a stag. He has a clinking chain. He blows on a horn. He's the keeper of Windsor Forest. He's terrified people. And he puts a blight on cows who have blood in their milk. Oh, yummy. But he isn't long forgotten and laughed at legend. There's still sightings to this day. He's been seen all the way up till, all up through the 20th century. I believe I looked that I thought there was an account from the early 2000s, but I can't not quite find it. But let me share with you some of the sightings that have happened. Sightings have been known to happen before terrible disasters such as the Great Depression, the death of George VI in 1952. But finding sources on this, even before the Second World War, it's hard to find sources on that. However, we do have some sightings that were taken down and with witnesses' names. Mr. Evan Bale, the father of Lord Burton, who died in May of 2013, heard the hunting horn and the baying of the hounds when he was at Eton in 1926. There was a report from a Mrs. Walter Legg, J.P., who lived at a farmhouse in Windsor. She had just gone to bed one night when she heard the baying of hounds coming from the direction of Smith's Lawn. It kept getting louder and then died away in the direction of Windsor Castle. She heard the sounds on another night at midnight. This time was also heard by her daughter. Another lady living at Windsor in the 1930s heard the hounds and saw them running the open grounds in the great park in the moonlight. Elliot O'Donnell, the famous ghost hunter, whom I've shared stories with, he's written some wonderful stories about ghost animals that I've shared, had lunch with the Dean of Windsor in the autumn of 1936. He asked him if he'd heard anything of Hearn, and he replied, "I can tell you that 2 Eton College boys are rumored to have heard Hearn's phantom hounds on their way back to school one evening, not so very long ago. They were in the park when they heard the distant baying of hounds and the sound of horse hooves careening madly over the ground. They looked in the direction of the sounds but could see nothing to account for them. The sounds kept drawing nearer to them, and they were distinctly conscious of the rush of many feet past them, accompanied by a cold current of air. That's the story the boys are alleged to have told on their arrival at the college." On the 22nd of September in 1947, the American magazine Life ran a long article on Britain's ghosts. "There were more ghosts in houses than termites," was the quote. "There was a woman who told the London Evening News that she'd seen in Windsor Park the shadowy figure of a man on horseback. Seeing her, he gave a maniacal laughter and rode off into the woods, the sound of a hunting horn following." And a Morris dancer told folklorist R.L. Tongue a story that involved a teddy boy. If you don't know what a teddy boy is, it was a group that was, they were kind of rebellious rapscallions. They dressed in Edwardian styles. The girls could barely move their legs for the tight skirts, but sort of in that style, but this was in the 1950s. And this teddy boy, this teenager, was killed in the 1950s by an invisible arrow. Him and 2 other lads were mucking about in Windsor Great Park, breaking down small trees, so causing a lot of mischief. The teddy boy then found a hunting horn on the ground and blew it. A giant yelp came from the trees, and the baying of some hounds followed. They all ran to a local church. Teddy boy stumbled, and as he reached the church last, there was the sound of an arrow in flight, and he dropped down dead. No sign of hounds, hunter, or arrow were found. In 1962, a similar thing happened. A group of youths were said to have found another huge hunting horn in the park and blew it. Their call was answered by another horn, as well as the sound of hounds baying nearby. Hearn showed himself this time, riding the back of a horse and wearing enormous ragged antlers. The youths threw down the horn and ran for their lives. These sounds of hounds and hunting horns are said to represent the great pagan wild hunt. Well, we were just there, were we not? Okay, so that goes to show you that, up through, there was one in 1976 from the 14 Times. It appears that on the night of the 22nd of September, a 19-year-old Coldstream guardsman on duty overlooking a sunken garden in the grounds of Windsor Castle saw something which frightened him so much he collapsed. After he was discovered and recovered in the hospital, he swore that the statue of a horned man in chains suddenly came alive before his eyes. The army has refused any more available information on that. The unarmed guardsmen were sent away to rest. Yeah. Anyway, so he was obviously not believed, but he wished to forget the incident. I can easily understand that. So, we have Hearn. Well, now there is another denizen that kind of goes along with this. He's linked to Hearn and Kiernanuus as a similar deity with a similar job of protecting the forest. This creature is the Green Man. Leaf and foliage cover him. You've seen pictures, you've seen displays of him. It reminds me, if you look at him, of the lady that was in Missing 411 The Hunted, who saw the predator-type creature moving about the trees while she was in her stand. This recent sighting, however, was in England of not so long ago. A gentleman by the name of Mark Thompson shared this on Sasquatch Chronicles. He used to live in England near London, in a town called High Wycombe, and it goes as follows. My encounter involves the legendary Green Man. The Green Man is a legend of old and dates back thousands of years, just like the Native American stories of Sasquatch. In my case, I grew up next to Chiltern Hills, which span across the southwest to the northwest of London. It is a very dense wooded area and has many legends of the Green Man, Hearn the Hunter, Jack-o'-lantern, Will-o'-the-Wisp, Jack of the Green, etc. Some parts of the UK were not inhabited until the late 1800s, so forestry was quite big in England. I was 6 years old when I had my encounter. It happened behind my house, where there was a wooded area that led out of my town towards the countryside. I was with some older boys who were carrying a ladder to erect a swing on a tree in the middle of this wooded area. There was a meadow full of long grass, but in a clearing in the woods. Once we had erected the swing and had goofed around for a bit, the bigger boys had decided it was time to head home. I was the last one to leave. I can remember following the bigger boys at a distance, maybe 20 yards ahead of me. I don't know what made me stop and look to my left, but on the edge of the meadow, beside a large tree, there was a huge figure. I remember craning my neck to look up at the creature's face. Now I estimate to be 7 to 8 feet tall. The creature had a lot of long hair dropping down from its body, which was full of twigs and leaves, like a ghillie suit. The face was huge, deep-set eyes, the long, thin lips were open, and it was smiling at me. I thought it was smiling, but the rest of its face wasn't. Now I think it was showing its teeth. I was literally 10 feet away from the thing, and I ran. I ran as fast as I could and caught the bigger boys. By this time, they were nearing the edge of the woods. I never told anyone about this sighting for years afterwards. I would have nightmares about this creature coming through the woods to come get me. I would have nightmares that this thing was in our house downstairs. When I laid on my pillow, my heartbeat would sound like its footsteps coming to get me. It really did shake me up. I had no confidence growing up, and I couldn't get the image out of my head. Some other people have since seen this creature, but it has been at night, and they mistook it for a ghost. Where I lived is about 3 miles from the Great King's Hill, where this sighting took place. Anyway, so there is some things to think about. If these things are somehow connected to our world by whatever means, string theory or not, or whatever it may be, it does look like these hunters go back to, well, as far as we can remember, as far as history goes, and into prehistory. Is it a shared Jungian link to something, or is it something that still hunts us today? I'll let you decide. So quoth this raven. Thank you so kindly for stopping by my chateau, my darlings. It does mean so much to me. Please, if you have not subscribed, as many of you have not, please do so. Give me a like so I know what you would like to hear. And comment. I always love to read your comments. And special thanks to my Patreon and membership supporters. Ciao, darlings.